What the hell is up, everybody? Louis back here again for UFC 288. Aljamain Sterling taking on Henry triple champion CEJUDO for the bantamweight title. CEJUDO coming off a 3-year-long layoff to try to get his title back. And then in the co-main, you got Bilal, remember the name Muhammad, taking on Gilbert El Barino Burns for supposedly the #1 contender spot at welterweight. Promised a title shot next, regardless of if Colby fights Leon next or not. So that's very interesting. That fight came on short notice, saved the card, basically. And he's got some fun bangers, man. Drew Dober's on the prelims, so that's pretty interesting. Kron Gracie's making his return. Jessica Andrade is fighting. I mean, it's going to be a great card. Parker Porter's on the card. And I'm going to this one. I can't wait, in New Jersey. The closest thing to Pittsburgh in about a year, so very excited. But just get right into this one, man. I'm very pumped. We got some big stakes on this card. First fight of the night at 185 pounds, men's middleweight. Joseph Ugly Man Holmes taking on Claudio Ribeiro. Holmes took on Jun Young Park his last fight. In the first round, he lands some jabs and leg kicks at range, but then he eats a hook and an uppercut in the pocket. And then he battles with the clinch, but then he gets pressed with a leg kick. His leg kick gets caught, and then he gives up his back, gets pushed down. But then he's able to put his back to the mat, and then he's able to get up and reverse at the end, and then take Jun Young Park's back for about 20 seconds. So that's not nothing. So interesting. And then the second round, he lands a 1-2, but then he gets body locked, and he gives up his back, gets drugged down right into back mount, and then he eats some ground and pound, and then he gets submitted by a rear naked choke. So yeah, he's got about a round in him. So. But some decent stuff. I mean, he was landing with some jabs early on. Then Claudio Ribeiro took on Abdul Razak Al Hassan, his last fight. In the first round, he blasts leg kicks with his back toward the fence, but then he gets shot to the fence. He's able to defend the takedown attempt. Then he backs up, and he lands a straight right counter off a looping shot, and then he's able to defend the double and then a clinch on the fence. And he keeps that overhook in the clinch position, but then he eats some elbows for his troubles. But at least he didn't get taken down, so showed a real fight in that aspect. And then the second round, he just swings wild. Then he gets rocked with a counter right hook, and then he eats a follow-up flurry, just gets KO'd. So yeah, both these guys are kind of one-round fighters, it seems like. I mean, they can go more than one round, but I think they're most effective in the first round, so it should be interesting. Claudio Ribeiro, -180. Joseph Holmes, +155. I don't know. This is bottom of the barrel, basically, at middleweight. I'm going to go Joseph Holmes at +150. I think he can jab him up and keep him at range. And, you know, he's got some skills in the grappling department. He might be able to take his back. Claudio Ribeiro just kind of looks like he's going to throw some big shots. I think Joseph Holmes has better technique. He's more precise. He's cleaner. So I'm going to go with Joseph Holmes, +155. Not a bad play, in my opinion. Okay. Second fight of the night at 185 pounds, men's middleweight. Phil Hawes taking on ALISKEROV. He's making his debut. Phil Hawes took on Roman Dolidze his last fight. In the first round, he stalks and he jabs the body and the head. He looks for a straight right, and then he comes back into range, and he hits a duck under right into full guard, but he eats some elbows, and then he gets caught in a leg lock whenever he's defending the armbar, and then his knee pops out. So yeah. He was fighting Roman Dolidze. So Roman Dolidze is a wild man, and he went for the armbar. Phil Hawes steps over, decent defense for the armbar, and then Roman Dolidze grabs his leg and then pops his knee out. Roman Dolidze thinks that the ref is about to stop it. He doesn't, so he lets go. So Phil Hawes is just kind of skirting the fence on one working knee, basically. But he's able to land a left hook and a right cross in the pocket, but then he gets dropped with the right hook at range and then gets KO'd with the 1-2. So tough one for him. But before that, he took on Deron Winn. In the first round, he lands some step-in jabs, and he backs up out of range. And then he drops him with the left hook and then a straight right. Then he's able to land some counter right crosses, and then he drops him, and then he lands some step-in elbows. So, and then that fight went 2 rounds, and Phil Hawes just kind of pieced up Deron Winn. Deron Winn could not take him down. Phil Hawes, decent wrestling defense there. And then Ikram Aliskerov, he took on Mario Felipe de Souza his last fight outside the UFC. He's making his debut. In the first round, he eats a right cross on the level change attempt, and his double attempt gets stuffed. But then he walks into some body and leg kicks, and he shoots a double on the fence. Gets it completes a double off the fence, and then he's able to get the Kimura from side control and just gets a submission. Jumps right in that Kimura, so good for him. And then before that, he took on NEWJERSEY. In the first round, he stalks with some jabs. He lands a step-in right hook, and then he rocks him with a flurry. And then he's able to go right into, gets around his back, goes for the mat return, and he takes his back, lands some nice ground and pound, goes for the Kimura attempt. Then he uses that to maintain back mount, lands a bunch of nasty ground and pound. Then the second round, he lands a front kick and then a right hook to a body lock slam, right into full mount, arm triangle attempt. And then he's able to step over. And then he transitions to the Kimura, steps over his head, and almost broke his arm off. So, very good stuff from him. ALISKEROV is minus 190, and Phil Haas is plus 160. ALISKEROV coming off the Contender Series. The Contender Series fade is a thing. But, I don't know, man. Phil Haas broke his knee last fight, and it seems like he doesn't have gas toward the end of the rounds, the last round. And he's either really hit or miss, man, and he'll just be doing very well, and then he'll just get hit with a big shot. He just, like, kind of stumbles all over the place. You know, Ikram, not necessarily a power puncher, but I think Ikram's going to be able to pressure Phil more. Phil might be able to piece him up and land some of the cleaner shots, but I think Ikram, by the second and the third round, he's going to be able to get him to the ground one way or the other, if it's a double or if it's a body lock trip, put him in some submission attempts. You know, Phil Haas, I guess, is susceptible to submissions, so I don't know. I don't really like betting Contender Series favorites, but, you know, ALISKEROV, he's only lost one fight, and that was to Khamzat Chimaev, so I don't know. I just don't think Phil Haas is in a great place to be taking his fight. So I'm going to go with ALISKEROV. We'll see. I might be wrong, and I might feel like very stupid. Main event of the early prelims, 265 pounds men's heavyweight. Braxton Smith making his UFC debut, taking on Parker Porter. This is a fun one, fun slot fest, and I'm excited for it, man. And it's probably only going to go one round. Braxton Smith took on Ja'Cory Savage in peak fighting his last fight. In the first round, he gets backed up with some leg kicks, but then he swings wild overhands, and then he misses most of them. Then he lands some short hooks whenever he gets clinched, and he eats an elbow, but then he circles out, lands an overhand right, left hook, knockout. Dude was flatlined, so this dude's got insane power, even that's all he can do. And then he took on Edson Lopez his last fight. Don't know, peak fighting again. In the first round, he gets pressed with leg kicks, but then he starts kind of stalking him and getting him toward the fence. Then he just lands one step in right cross, gets the knockout. So that fight was a little longer. That fight went like 2 minutes, and nothing really happened, to be honest. But he kept that forward pressure on, so I thought that was good at least. And then Parker Porter took on Justin Tafa his last fight. In the first round, he's kind of feints the jabs. He looks for the dip in right cross, but then eats a body kick and a counter overhand. But then he's able to return a 1-2 and then a leg kick. Nice combo for him. But then he eats some uppercuts in the clinch, and then he eats a check left hook whenever he's lunging in. Just gets knocked out. Flatlined. So before that, he took on Alan Badeau. In the first round, he lands a left hook and then a counter 1-2 in the pocket. He landed an overhand flurry, but then he eats an uppercut, and then he gets a single to the body lock, and then he just kind of digs the underhook and kind of wears on him against the fence. And that fight went 3 rounds. He got the decision. So, and that's kind of Parker's specialty. He just kind of wear on guys, and he's got some decent grappling, but not really. No, he does. He really doesn't have good wrestling, but for heavyweights, he can make them carry his weight effectively. Parker Porter minus 170 and Braxton Smith plus 145. I'm going to take a flyer. It's a low-level heavyweight. I'm going to go for Braxton Smith because he is the underdog. I think it's a good story. I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but Parker Porter just got knocked out viciously, and I think if they just go in there and bang, Braxton Smith could definitely catch Parker Porter. I remember back in the day, Chris Dawkins pieced up Parker Porter, so it's going to be Braxton Smith. You know, he needs to get this win in the first round, so I think it can happen, but I'm just not laying favorite money on Parker Porter. So Braxton Smith plus 145, the whole fight under 1.5 minus 190. And Braxton Smith, you want to do that first round KO, because he's going to have to win in the first round. It's possible it goes to the second round, but I don't know. You know, probably not. So, yeah. But it's since it's an underdog, I'm just going to go Braxton Smith. Real quick, Braxton Smith by first round KO is plus 265. So, actually, 275. So, that's definitely the play. Okay. first fight on the regular prelims, 115 pounds women's strawweight. You got 2 fights of that on this card. Marina Rodriguez taking on Verna Jandiroba. Rodriguez took on Amanda Lemos her last fight. In the first round, she skirts her back along the fence. She gets pressed with jabs, though. She's able to stuff the body lock trip, and then she gets on top right at the end there. So, you know, decent. And then the second round, she throws a lunge and then a straight shot, but then she eats a check left hook. She gets clinched to the fence, and then she gets foot swept and then passed by Amanda. And then she gives up her back, and then she gets put in a neck crank, but then she's able to get her back to the mat and get out of danger. Then in the third round, she gets pressed, and she eats some jabs. She gets rocked with the overhand right off of her step-in straight, and then she eats a flurry, and then just gets TKO'd. So, very strange. Marina Rodriguez, you know, very technical fighter, and Amanda Lemos just got that power, man. She's got that power in her hands. Verna Jandiroba took on Angela Hill her last fight. In the first round, she gets the underhook, clinch against the fence, and then she just kind of rolls under, goes for a leg lock, tries to go for a knee bar. Don't know if that was advisable. But then she looks for some step-in jabs and a 1-2, but then she gets tripped with the underhook at the end of the round. Then the second round, she lands a step-in overhand, but then she gets clinched to the fence, but she's able to get double unders. She eats some right crosses at range, but then she level changes, and she gets the double right into half guard, goes for the armbar attempt, back to the mat, and then Angela gets on top, and then she tries to fully extend it, but can't really get it. And then in the third round, she eats a right cross off of her hook, but then she lands a step-in 1-2s miss, but she gets a single transition to a double off the fence. She's able to get around her back standing, able to drag her down into half guard, and then she lands some ground and pound and then takes her back in a very strong way to end the fight. Decently competitive, but the takedowns are definitely a difference for Verna. Verna is plus 110. Marina Rodriguez is minus 130. I'm going to go with Verna Jandiroba. I think the grappling is going to make the difference. Marina Rodriguez, she kind of was on a title trajectory, and Amanda Lemos kind of took that from her, in my opinion. And Verna Jandiroba, you know, slight underdog, so you want to look at that. And I just think Verna's going to be able to get those takedowns. At some key moments of the fight. Might not win every round, but... And Marina doesn't really offer anything power-wise. And Verna can get in there and scrap, and she can make it ugly. So I'm going to go with Verna. I think she can get it done. Second fight on the early prelims, 170 pounds, men's welterweight. Chaos Williams coming back after a year-long layoff, taking on UFC newcomer Rolando Bedoya, coming off a year-long layoff as well. Chaos Williams took on Randy Brown his last fight. In the first round, he throws some overhands, tries to work into the clinch, and then he's able to rock him with a short uppercut and then a flurry. And then he gets on top and tries to go for the Darce. Pretty interesting. But then he gets pressured back and eats some jabs and uppercut toward the end of the round. Pretty competitive. Then in the second round, he lands some leg kicks at range, but then he gets pressed back and eats some jabs. But then he clips him with some wild hooks he throws. And then he's able to reverse the clinch attempts. He's able to get an underhook himself, and he eats a left, but then he eats left hook whenever he's rushing into the clinch. But then in the third round, his cross gets countered with a 1-2, and then he eats some jabs. But then he's able to drop him with a wide right hook off of his jab. He's not able to hold him down, and then he eats some jabs and a hard right and some right crosses like 2 times in a row back on the feet. And that kind of solidified it for Randy Brown. It was pretty close. And, you know, he dropped him real quick, but it was like a flash knockdown, and Randy Brown got right back up, and he couldn't capitalize with ground and pound. So they gave it to Randy Brown. What are you going to do, man? But, you know, Randy Brown, he's like borderline top 15, so pretty solid performance in my opinion. Then Rolando Bedoya, he took on Pablo de Horta in FFC. In the first round, he eats a right cross and a 1-2 off of a short hook feint. But then he lands some leg kicks at range, but then he backs out. He lands a counter right and then a left hook. He gets body locked to the fence whenever he throws his wide hook, and then he darts in with a 1-2, but then he gets clipped with some hooks, and then he eats a left hook just kind of standing out there at range. But then he's able to get a body lock takedown during the pocket exchange. Can't really hold him down there or do anything, but then he rocks him with some right hooks in the pocket. Then the second round, he lands a stiff jab, some stiff jabs and a 1-2, which rocks him, and then he lands a flurry, and then he drops him with a leg kick. He jumps right into half guard. He lands some heavy ground and pound, and he goes for the Bravo choke and gets a submission. So, yeah, he'll take one to give a couple. So, yeah, I don't know if that's the best strategy against Chaos Williams. Rolando is plus 275, and Chaos Williams is minus 330. Don't love the line, but just watching the tape, Rolando, he just lets people hit him, basically, and Chaos, you do not want to get hit by Chaos Williams, so I think this is kind of a no-brainer. It seems like Chaos Williams is an exciting fighter. They might want to give him an easier fight or a fight that they can set up a big knockout to get some viewers. So I'm going to go with Chaos Williams here. Chaos Williams by knockout minus 135. But if you want to take a long shot, Chaos Williams by submission plus 1100. I mean, he did try to go for that on Randy Brown, and I think Rolando, somebody a step down like Rolando, he might try to go for that same choke. Or he might try to go for that Darce choke. So you never know, dude. I would put like $5 on the submission, but I'm going to go with Chaos Williams here, It's just kind of a no-brainer for me, so. But it might come back to bite me in the ass like it always does. Doesn't matter. Coming in event of the prelims, 205 pounds, men's light heavyweight. Kennedy and NZECHUKWU taking on Devin Clark. Brown Bear Clark, I believe his name is. Kennedy, he took on Ian Cutelaba his last fight. He was the de facto main event because the actual main event fell off. So, yeah, good for them. I took on Ian Cutelaba. In the first round, he gets rocked with some overhands, and he gives up his back standing, and then he gets taken down with the trip into half guard. Then he's able to gain full guard and kind of pull him down to stop a lot of the damage. And he kicks him off and he gets up to his feet, but then he gets headlocked, but then he's able to come out the back. He takes his back standing and got some momentum at the end of that first round, which is important. Then the second round, he eats some overhands, but then he lands some straights and he lands a knee off of a big knee off of Ian's double attempt, and then he lands some crosses and he rocks him with a jump knee, and then he drops him with a flurry and just gets a TKO. So very good showing from him. He was able to make it out of the first round with Ian Cutelaba, and he hit him with that one big knee. The dude's got power, and it showed. And wrestling defense, like, not horrible. And then Devin Clark took on Da Eun Jung his last fight. Da Eun Jung knocked out Kennedy and NZECHUKWU with a elbow, like one. So pretty interesting. But anyway, in their fight in the first round, he rushes the clinch to the fence. He gets the underhook, but then he gets reversed, and then he gets a body lock. With a body lock, and then he gets taken out with a body lock, front foot sweep, and then he gives up his back, but then he eats the elbow in the clinch, but then he's able to land a leg kick, but then he eats some jabs, but then he's able to get the blast double from space, but he can't really hold him down though. But then he lands a lead left hook and he shoots a double, and then he stops the lateral drop attempt, and he gets on top from there, lands some nice ground and pound. Relatively competitive, and then I think he stole the first round there, so that was good to see. And then the second round, he eats a jump knee, but then he gets the double, but he's not able to hold him down, and he gives up his back standing, but he has a 2-on-1, like baseball bat grip, and then he's able to like get out of there, kind of like shake him off his back, and then he lands some hooks, and he's able to get the body lock off of that, and then he lands a step in overhand right from range, pretty big shot. Then in the third round, he gets taken down with the body lock trip in a half guard, and he gives up his back, but he's able to shake him off. And then he takes his back standing. Then they kind of break away. But then he misses some lead hooks, but then he clips him with the overhand right at the end. So, pretty competitive fight. Devin Clark put together a decent game plan. And he's got, he doesn't really have a ton of power, but he was able to hit him with some big shots and then get the clinch and then try to wear on him. So, put together a good game plan. Devin Clark plus 150, Kennedy and NZECHUKWU minus 175. I'm going to go with Kennedy and NZECHUKWU. I don't love the price, but Devin Clark, I mean, when he fought Ian Cutelaba, he just got destroyed. His teeth got knocked out of his mouth. No disrespect to him, but that's just how it is. And, Devin Clark's going to want to clinch Kennedy a lot, I think. I think Kennedy's going to hit him with some big shots. Then Devin's going to clinch to save his life, and he's going to be able to clinch him a little bit. Might even get a takedown. And it's just going to be a matter of if Kennedy can break away from those clinches or get up whenever he gets taken down. I think he will, especially in the second and the third rounds. I think he'll be able to keep Devin off of him. And to me, Devin has to put together the perfect game plan, and he's got to stay on him the whole fight. And I just think Kennedy's going to land some big shots at some point. So I'm going with Kennedy and NZECHUKWU. Don't love the price, but I think he's going to win. I like the power. Main event of the prelims. This is my most anticipated matchup, violence-wise. Drew Dober, the Crimson Chin, taking on Matt Steamroller FREVOLA. Should be a fun one. Drew Dober hanging around top 15. Doing Matt a favor, giving him this fight. So, big opportunity for Matt here. Drew Dober just wants to stay busy, wants to get another knockout. Drew Dober took on Bobby Green his last fight. In the first round, he eats some jabs, and he tries to go for the body lock lifts, but he gets reversed. But Bobby Green doesn't want to stay on the ground. Then he gets pressured at the fence. He eats some jabs at range, and he looks for 1-2s, but they're a little too short, or Bobby does a good job of slipping them. But then he lands some left crosses and some leg kicks off of his jabs. And then the second round, he just starts walking through the jabs. And then he starts landing some left hooks, and then he lands a left hook, right hook, and then he lands a left hook counter off of Bobby's jab and just gets the KO. Just like one shot, knocks him down. So he just walked through Bobby's punches, and that's how it went, man. And yeah, Bobby's a good fighter, and Drew Dober deaded him. And Bobby Green doesn't get knocked out often. Matt Frevola took on Ottoman Azaitar's last fight. In the first round, he pressures him to the fence. He looks for some jabs. He lands a lunge right, but then he misses, and he lands a short right hook and a left hook, and then he kind of backs out of range. But then he lands a slide-in right hook, counter off of Ottoman's left cross, but then he eats a left hook in return. But then he lands a check right hook from the collar tie, then a left hook, gets the knockout. Yeah, I thought it'd be the opposite. I thought Matt Frevola would get knocked out, but dude's got power as well, and he's slick. Before that, he took on Gennaro Valdez. In the first round, he eats a knee and a right cross, but then he's able to land a right hook. But then he catches the kick, and he drops him with the overhand left, and then a flurry, and they drops him again with the left hook. He's able to stuff the double leg attempt, but then he eats an elbow in the clinch. But then he gets the clinch, lands some knees to the head and the body, and then drops him again with the left hook. But then he drops him again, just with whatever. He dropped him too many times, and then gets the back mount. TKO via ground and pound, and Valdez was kept getting up, so it was very interesting. Matt Frevola plus 180, Drew Dober minus 210. I've been going back and forth. I like Drew Dober. I think the line is a little high, but Frevola, he just got knocked out in the past. He got knocked out in like 6 seconds by Terrence McKinney. Drew Dober took McKinney's best shots and knocked him out, so I know MMA math doesn't always work, but I don't know, man. Frevola can wrestle. He's not like an amazing wrestler, but I think Drew Dober will be able to stop those takedowns later on and find his shots, land some big shots. And it's just, it's a tough fight to pick, in my opinion, but I just see Drew Dober knocking him out, man. I see Drew Dober find those big shots, find those big hooks. I think Matt might get a little overzealous and Drew Dober catches him coming in. So I'm going to go for Drew Dober here. We'll see what happens, though. First fight on the main card at 145 pounds, men's featherweight. Kron Gracie coming off like a 3-year-long layoff, taking on Charles Air Jourdain. Should be interesting. Kron Gracie took on Cub Swanson in his last fight. In the first round, he gets pressed forward with some jabs and some 1-2s, but then he eats some counter hooks. But then he walks into a body kick and some hooks, and he looks for the double jab, but he's not able to like touch Cub. Can't really find him yet. But then he eats some body shots, and he keeps the high guard, which is interesting. He just kind of walks through body shots. Then the second round, he lands a right hook and a 1-2 into the clinch, and he tries to pull guard. But then he walks through some body shots, and he lands some jabs and some hooks from the collar tie. And then he gets a collar tie, goes to the overhook, but then he eats some hooks from there. And then in the third round, he keeps the high guard again. He eats some hooks, and he looks to go for the collar tie again, tries to land shots from there and try to set like a trip up or something, or maybe pull guard. But then he goes for the wizard kick, it gets stuffed, and then he pulls guard, and then he lands a nasty up kick. But then he shoots the single and pulls guard, but can't do much with it. So interesting fight, but Cub's a dog. And then before that, he took on Alex Caceres. In the first round, he lands a counter cross off of Alex's jab, and then he ducks under the hook, and he takes his back, puts one hook in, pulls him down to the ground, gets the body triangle, rear naked choke submission, like cake. So that's why Kron wants to go to the ground so bad. Alex Caceres is good. And then Charles Jourdain took on Nathaniel Wood his last fight. In the first round, he gets taken down with an outside trip when he's throwing body shots from the collar tie. And then he gets taken down into full guard, but he's able to wall walk back against the fence. But he gives up his back standing, but then finally able to break free, stalks forward with some 1-2s and some jabs and some head kicks, but none of them really land flush. But then he gets caught with a right cross off of his kick, but then he gets pressed to the fence, and he lands some counter hooks in the pocket, though. And then in the second round, he lands a body kick, and but then he gets caught. His body kick gets caught, and he gets taken down, but then he rips the body, and then he lands a 1-2 and then some left crosses in return. But then he goes for the collar tie, tries to look for the uppercuts, but then he gets foot swept, but then he's able to stand right back up. Sorry, the ref stands it back up. Nathaniel's in full guard, but Charles Jourdain does a decent job of like neutralizing them. So, but Charles Jourdain didn't get up by himself. They both kind of trade hooks and uppercuts in the pocket, but then he's able to complete a foot sweep, but he can't hold him down though. Then in the third round, he gets foot swept again, gives up his back. He's able to get up, but then he eats some elbows in the clinch. And then he gets just beat in the pocket exchanges. Like they're kind of throwing short hooks. Seemed like Nathaniel was keeping it a little tighter and a little more precise. And Charles Jourdain was a little too wild, too looping. But then he eats a 1-2 from space at the end there. So, yeah. Charles Jourdain minus 170. Kron Gracie plus 145. Yeah, I don't know. Charles Jourdain just had a bad game plan. It seemed like he went forehead to forehead with Nathaniel Wood, trying to like outpace him, and Nathaniel Wood hit him with a bunch of foot sweeps. So I think if he does have the Kron Gracie, kind of like how Cub Swanson and Kron Gracie fought, I think Kron's going to be able to pull him in guard or something where he wants him, or take his back somehow. And Charles Jourdain, when he fought Shane Burgos, he looked amazing in the third round. But like the first 2 rounds, like Shane Burgos found his back and backpacked him, and Charles Jourdain could not get him off of him. So, you know, and Kron Gracie, I'd get the 3-year-long layoff, but plus 145, some decent money to think about there. I'm going to go with Kron Gracie. I just think he's able to lock him up somehow, get his back, maybe not get the submission, but Charles Jourdain's going to have a hell of a time escaping. So I'm going to go with Kron Gracie plus 145. Kron Gracie by sub plus 225. Why not? Second fight on the main card at 145 pounds, men's featherweight. Again, Movsar Evloev taking on Diego Lopes. Short notice replacement. It was supposed to be Bryce Mitchell, pulled out, so unfortunate, but we'll see. Diego Lopes has a huge opportunity here, so should be fun. Movsar took on Danige his last fight. In the first round, he gets rushed with a hook and a 1-2 at range. So he throws a 1-2 at range, but then it gets blocked. But then he's able to block the slide in 1-2 from Danige. But then he gets clipped with a counter, and then he gets clipped with the hook when he's dipping in, looking for takedown attempt or something. But then he lands a jump knee off of a straight to the body by Danige. But then he lands a step in, right cross, and he gets the double whenever Dan throws a knee up, and he takes his back, gets one hook in, drags him down on the mat. Then in the second round, he lands a counter hook off of Dan's straight, and he circles, and he squares back up, and he lands a jump knee off of Dan's hook. And then he walks into a straight right, and then he eats some hooks while he's exiting the range. Then he feints some jabs, and then he just shoots the blast double, like feints a double jab. Danige like raises his hands, gets the blast double. So that was really nice trickery there. Then in the third round, he gets the underhook, duck under, off of a step-in hook by Danige, and he takes his back, gets the left hook in, and just kind of beats him up a little bit. And, you know, Danige did, you know, very tough, defended pretty well, but couldn't really do much the third round. So, yeah. Movsar, like, you know, he didn't relax in the third round, so that's something to think about. Then Diego Lopes took on Angel Rodriguez in Lux Fight Organization. In the first round, he rushes with some loaded up hooks, and then he catches the kick. Then he lands a straight right, and then he's able to complete the double off of the fence. Goes for the darts inside control, and then he uses that to take his back, lands some nice ground and pound. And then in the second round, he drops him with the straight right and just gets a TKO via ground and pound. So, yeah, pretty decent showing from Diego Lopes. He's very angry. He throws with a lot of power, and he doesn't like to be in there too long. Diego Lopes plus 625. Movsar Evloev minus 900. You know, Diego Lopes is going to have to knock him out, basically. Movsar has a decent chin, and I just see Movsar getting a takedown whenever Diego Lopes rushes him like that. So the line sucks, but I'm going to go with Movsar Evloev. But Movsar by submission plus 450 if you're feeling froggy, because Diego Lopes is coming on a very short notice. So maybe he finally gets a submission, you know. You would hope so. But also, though, I mean, Diego Lopes he goes a distance quite often, so. But big money. Let's roll the dice. I'm going to go Movsar Evloev by submission. Featured fight of the night at 115 pounds, women's strawweight. Interesting fight for the title picture. Jessica Andrade coming back up from 125, taking on XIAONAN, coming off a big win against Mackenzie Dern. Nobody knows what's going on with strawweight, but this fight is a big one, evidently. Jessica Andrade, she took on Amanda Lemos, her last fight at 115. In the first round, she eats some jabs at range, then she lands some body kicks. She stalks forward, but then she eats a 1-2, and then she eats some leg kicks, but then she just ducks under Amanda's cross, gets a standing arm triangle, squeezes the hell out of her, gets a standing arm triangle submission. Didn't know that was possible. She's a monster. And then her last fight, it was at 125, though. She took on Erin Blanchfield on a couple weeks' notice. In the first round, she lands a leg kick and a right cross. She swings wild, but then she eats a jab, and then she eats some 1-2s at range whenever she's coming in, and she swings wild, gets a little frustrated, and then she gets rocked with the 1-2, but then she clips her with a wild flurry, and then she lands some counter right hooks in the pocket at the end. Then in the second round, she eats some jabs whenever she's coming in. She's swinging wild, a little too far out, and then she gets countered with some straight shots down the middle. She feints the jabs, and then she lands a leg kick and a cross, but then she gets taken out with the body lock trip, gives up her back, and gets submitted with a rear naked choke. And it just looked like she kind of ran out of steam. I think she should have took more time off since the last fight, but, you know, I think she underestimated Erin Blanchfield. I think a lot of people did. So then XIAONAN took on Mackenzie Dern her last fight. In the first round, she lands some short hooks off her jab. In the clinch attempt, she lands some side kicks to the knees to kind of keep Mackenzie off her. She landed a lot of those. And then she stuffs a single, and then she's able to break away from the clinch. But then she gets clinched from the hook exchanges, and then she gets taken out the hip toss right at the end there. But she's okay. Actually, she kind of popped out a little bit toward the end there. So, and then in the second round, she lands a step in overhand, but then she gets pulled into guard. She defends a leg lock, and then she lands some ground and pound, but then she gets put in the omoplata, and this looked really bad. And then Mackenzie transitioned to an arm triangle, but she's able to defend that. And then, but then she gives up her back, but then she eats some ground and pound at the end. But it looked like she was about to submit her. So Yeon is very tough, and she can grit it out. Even if she's losing, she's not going to give up those submissions, and that's very important. In the third round, she lands some straights, and she circles out of the clinch attempt. She lands some front kicks at range, keeps her off of her. And then she lands a counter left hook off of Mackenzie's 1-2. And then she lands an overhand right and a left hook at the end there. And then there's 2 more rounds. There's a 5-round fight, but this one's only 3. So, yeah. Yeon plus 145. Jessica Andrade minus 170. I like Yeon. I think she can piece her up. And, you know, she's got to avoid the big shots of Jessica Andrade. Yeon, you know, she got schooled by Carla Esparza with the wrestling and the grappling, but Yeon had pretty decent defense. Even though she did get taken down and got put in submission attempts, but she's been working on it. And she's at Team Alpha Male, and Team Alpha Male has a lot of good wrestlers and grapplers. And Song Yadong just won his fight, so I'm gonna ride with Team Alpha Male on this one. And I think Yeon gets it done. She's plus 145. I like that money. I'm gonna go with her. You know, and Jessica Andrade coming off a tough loss, so we'll see. Plus, she's got to cut weight back down, so who knows? Co-main event of the evening. I'm very excited for this fight. At 170 pounds, men's welterweight, huge fight. And I like both these guys. I want to see both these guys shine, but only one can, so it's interesting. Bilal, remember the name Muhammad, taking on Gilbert Dorino Burns. Bilal has been trying to get a title shot for a long time, and people always underestimated him, including myself. Not the most exciting guy, but he gets the job done, and he's gritty and he's tenacious. And, you know, this is his shot, man. He's cutting weight and Ramadan on short notice for what Dana White says is the #1 contender spot. So we'll see about that. But it's a good fight nonetheless. It's 5 rounders as a co-main event, non-title fight, so it's pretty special. Bilal took on Sean Brady his last fight. In the first round, he pressures forward, but he eats a 1-2, but then he pumps some jabs. They're a little too short, but he's able to stuff the double attempt from Sean Brady. But then he walks into a short right, but then he's able to land a 1-2 over top of Sean's jab, and he cuts him off on the cage. He lands some jabs and 1-2 right at the end of the round. And then in the second round, he walks through a step-in left hook, but then he eats a 1-2. But then he throws a 1-2-1 combination, and he clips him with the last punch, so he'll miss the 1-2, but then he clips him with the 1 again. But then he eats a lead left hook at range. But then he lands some jabs off of his overhand, and he's able to stuff the double leg attempt, starts jabbing in the body, and then he lands a step-in overhand, which rocks him, and then he lands some right crosses and some 1-2s, and throws some uppercuts in there, and then he lands a lead right hook, and the ref stops it, standing TKO. Maybe it was a little premature. It was also right at the end of the round, but he was hurting him bad, dude. I don't think he would have made it much longer. So, yeah, dude, everybody called Bilal Muhammad boring. He goes out there and gets a finish for the first time, I think, in his UFC career. So, yeah, man. Very impressive performance. And then Gilbert Burns took on Jorge Masvidal his last fight. In the first round, he looks for a lead left hook, but then he lands a right cross, but then he eats leg and body kicks when he's standing at range, but then he lands a step-in right cross and a leg kick. He's able to block the 1-2, and then he lands a counter right hook, and then he gets the body lock trip right at the end of the round. Then the second round, he lands drops him with the right hook, and lands the right hook, drops him with the right uppercut. I don't know if it's that or if he got knocked off balance, but Jorge popped right back up. But then he gets the double leg off of the fence right into full guard. Not very much ground and pound, but then he's able to keep the body lock on him, and Matt returns him a few times. Then in the third round, he lands some jabs from range. He lands a jab and then a lead left hook, which rocks him, and then rocks him with the 1-2, but then he eats a 1-2 in return, but then he lands a step-in uppercut as a counter, and then he's able to rip the body, and then he gets under the cross of Masvidal, and then gets a body lock trip takedown and finishes out the round. So, not the most exciting fight, but Jorge is dangerous on the feet. He was able to eat some of his shots. Gilbert landed a couple big shots himself, so just couldn't get any submission attempts going. But Gilbert minus 140, Bilal Muhammad plus 120. I know this fight could go a couple different ways, but first of all, 5 rounds, I think that favors Bilal Muhammad. Gilbert has a lot of power, throws a lot of big shots, and he could crack Bilal, but I think Bilal's got a decent chin. Sean Brady cracked him a couple times. But Gilbert, if nobody's pressing the action on him, he's kind of like doesn't do much at range. And I think Bilal's just going to be methodical. I think Bilal's going to take his time. I really don't know about the takedowns. I think Bilal is going to eventually work in some takedowns and get some doubles. Like, because Gilbert loads up with those big hooks sometimes. And it's just, if Bilal can defend those submission attempts, I think if he stays in full guard, he could, and just land some nasty ground and pound, I think he can be okay. But, you know, Kamzat took Gilbert down and didn't even want to be on top of him, so who really knows? But I think Bilal can do it. I think later on in the fight, Bilal start mixing in some takedowns. Maybe first couple rounds, it's like a stand-up battle. But I think Bilal picks his shots better. He's more precise. Not the hardest puncher, but I think he can piece them up. I think he can win on points. And then later on in the fight, I think Bilal could work in some takedowns. I really don't see a finish here, but maybe like Bilal gets a TKO because Gilbert's so tired. I don't know, but I'm going to go with Bilal Muhammad, slight underdog. I like that. The whole fight to go over 4.5 rounds, minus 135. Don't hate that. I don't know if there'd be a finish. I just picked overs because, but yeah, I'm just go with Bilal Muhammad plus 120. It's a good bet. Finally, the main event of the evening, a chance for history to be made. 135 pounds, men's bantamweight. Aljamain the Funk Master Sterling defending his title against Henry triple champion CEJUDO. CEJUDO coming off a 3-year-long layoff. He defended his belt against Dominic Cruz. He never lost it. He got stripped. He gave it up. He's coming to reclaim his throne. Aljamain coming off of a bulldozing of TJ Dillashaw. He doesn't think he's getting the credit he deserves. He wants to beat Triple C and solidify himself. The winner of this fight wins the Sean O'Malley sweepstakes. It should be fun, man. I'm excited. Henry CEJUDO, obviously Olympic champion. Aljamain Sterling shows good wrestling and good back-taking abilities in the cage. Not nearly a credentialed wrestler as Henry is, but we'll see how that plays out. That's why I'm so interested. Yeah, man. It's a big one. So Aljamain, he took on TJ Dillashaw's last fight. I'm not counting that. TJ Dillashaw only had one shoulder. So before that, it was the Peter Yan rematch. In the first round, he circles on the outside. His single attempt gets stuffed at first, but he pumps some jabs, but then he eats a counter hook. But then he lands some body kicks, but then he eats a hook off of his single attempt. Then in the second round, he feints jabs, and then he shoots a single, pushes him down. Then he takes his back right into the figure, right into mount, right into figure four, lands some ground and pound, has a couple rear naked choke attempts. Everybody was surprised by that one. But then in the third round, he gets pressed with some leg kicks, but then he's able to duck under the hook. His single attempt gets stuffed, though. But then he takes a shot, and then he lands a left hook, and then he shoots the single, and then he's able to duck the left hook, and then he shoots a single to a double leg, and he's able to take his back, and he jumps right on that thing, man. He's like, he doesn't even finish the takedown, so it's very interesting. And he was able to ride him out. Yan couldn't do a damn thing. And didn't land like a ton of ground and pound this time, but, you know, he had his back for the whole round. So very interesting. Then in the fourth round, this is when Aljamain kind of slows down. I don't know if it's part of his strategy to just give up these rounds or what. But in the first round, he throws a 1-2, but then he eats a hook. Eats some hook counters, but then his single attempt gets stuffed and he gives up his back, but Yan doesn't really do much with it. And then he's able to get back up. But then he gets pressed with the 1-2. His single attempt gets stuffed. And then he gives up his back again. Then he lands some kicks and he takes his back and he slides off. And he kind of slides off his back. He's like, because Yan's like in a quad pod, and then he's like kind of shaking him off. But then he eats some ground and pound at full guard, and then he gives up his back again, but didn't take any like real damage. Then in the fifth round, he shoots a single to the fence, but it gets stuffed. Then he lands a jab when he's backing up, and his double. He shoots a double, and then he gets back, and he takes Yan's back, and he's in like a quad pod position. He has the one leg in, but he's trying to like bump him down to the ground, but he can't get it. But then back on the feet, he eats a jump knee off of a level change, but then his single attempt is stuffed, and then gives up his back again to end the round. But he just kind of sat there, and like the way they were, like him and his corner looked, it kind of looked like that was their plan to like win the first 3 rounds, or like they knew they had a 10-8 round, and they just kind of gave up. Just didn't want to get finished, I guess. So I don't know, but masterful performance, I would say, because, you know, he was about to beat him the last fight. So then Henry CEJUDO took on Dominic Cruz May 2020. In the first round, he blasts leg kicks, like the hardest leg kicks I've ever seen. He gets a single off a body knee from Dominic Cruz, but he's not able to hold him down very long. But then he ducks, and he's able to land a counter left off of Dom's hooks. And then in the second round, he just walks through, and then he walks through the jabs of Dominic Cruz, and he blocks most of them, and then he pumps more leg kicks, but then he eats a lunge right hook right down the middle, but then he eats some hooks off of his step-in leg kick, but then he's able to land a step-in right hook. Dom just kind of like moving back and forth, he catches him with the right hook, but then he drops him with a big knee off of a level change by Dom, and then he just swarms him, gets the TKO from around the back. Obviously, the whole alcohol and cigarettes thing, like, I don't think they should have stopped it. It was right at the end of the round, but it is what it is, man. That was a great shot from Henry, and he put him in a bad way. So, and that's Dominic Cruz, man. He finished Dominic Cruz, so, yeah. Henry Cejudo, minus 115. Aljamain Sterling, minus 105. Flip a coin, man. How do you know how Henry's going to look after 3 years? Henry is better on the feet, I would say. His wrestling is better, but can Aljamain stop the takedowns? And also, Henry took down Dominic Cruz, couldn't hold him down for more than 5 seconds. So, I just don't know how much all this means. I think Aljamain might be able to find Henry's back, and if he does that, I don't think Henry's getting out of it. I don't think anybody is, so. But Aljamain probably does fade in rounds 4 and 5. But what does Henry look like in rounds 4 and 5? Probably decent conditioning, you're assuming, but he's been off for 3 years, so just too many unknowns. And Aljamain, he's the slight underdog as the champion. I'm just going to go with Aljamain. I wouldn't be surprised either way, but I just think Aljo is going to be able to find the back eventually. And on the feet, I just think he needs to hang in there on the feet and maybe stuff a takedown from Henry and get around his back. We'll see. It should be fun, though, man. Bantamweight's my favorite weight class. So, huge fight. Very excited. All right, everyone. Thanks for riding with me. Appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all that stuff. Appreciate it. Leave me a comment. Leave me some advice. I need it. I really need to do good this weekend. I did all my research, though. So, putting my best effort into it. It's, got to think more clearly and focus on singular fights. Let's see some upsets. Let's see some violence. And let's see some profits. Good luck, everyone. Get that money.